It's championship week. We're rolling into week 17. And if we win this matchup, we're winning the money. And today we're going to be looking at 10 wide receivers you can pluck off the waiver wire. And I hope you don't need this video and you're here just for entertainment. And I hope you're good to go. But if you need a wide receiver, we're going to go over the wide receiver landscape off the waiver wire so you can pick your guy. You can pick your poison and roll into your matchup, but what you need to do right now is click that subscribe button. Tap it with the finger on your phone, click it with the mouse on your computer, whatever you need to do to get the job done, because we're here to help you with your research for your fantasy football teams, especially for the drafts next year. Next August, you want to click that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the player values, the advanced analytics, the rookies, the training camp footage that drops on this channel every day throughout the offseason. Click that button, stop missing out, but let's look at these 10 wide receivers. And of course, we're going to talk about Noah Brown. Noah Brown has a good matchup this week against the Tennessee Titans. Pass funnel defense. We're seeing a lot of wide receivers hit against the Tennessee Titans. Tank Dell on IR. He's getting more snaps right now, about an 80 to 85% snap share right now. Getting more opportunities, more targets. Week 15, 11 targets. Week 16, 7 against Tennessee. Went off for 22.2 PPR fantasy points just 2 weeks ago. We're getting another crack at them, and now it's at home. If he's on waivers and you need a wide receiver to throw up in your lineup, Noah Brown could be your dude. Or you could be looking at Romeo Doubs, because the Packers are dealing with a lot of injuries at the wide receiver spot. Jaden Reed, Wicks, you know how that's going to be. The ball's going to be rolling in the air. Romeo Doubs has been a roller coaster wide receiver because he's had them up games, he's had them down games, but a guy we look at off the waiver wire every single week. Joshua Palmer is another wide receiver who's seen an increase in target share and snaps due to injuries to Keenan Allen. We don't know if he's going to be back next week, but he saw a 93% snap share last week. Saw 8 targets in the week prior, hit for 21 PPR fantasy points. He's playing against the Broncos. Chargers-Broncos games usually go off the hinges, go off the rails when it comes to fantasy production for these players, and that's something we might see here in week 17. Another wide receiver who's getting workload that you may want to pay attention to off the waiver wire. Curtis Samuel, like every week, he is a typical roller coaster wide receiver because he's like this a lot throughout the season, and we're seeing him go off, and then we see him dud out. We see him go off, then we see him dud out. 8 targets a game in his last 4 games, so he is getting used in the passing game. Prior to last week, he was running hot. The 3 games before week 16, 19 fantasy points, 10 fantasy points, and 21. We had our dud game. However, we're playing against the 49ers, one of the toughest defenses in the league. However, they will leak some fantasy points to wide receivers, so you might get lucky with Curtis Samuel this week, and he tends to hit against tougher defenses because he gets the short targets and he has the speed to hit up on that yak. Rashid Shaheed got a good matchup this week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He has an average depth of target of 14.9 yards. That means it's air yard city with this guy. He's another roller coaster wide receiver, and we were on the ups last week with 18.4 PPR fantasy points. Odds of him hitting 2 weeks in a row aren't great, but if it's going to happen, it's going to happen against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They leak deep balls to wide receivers. They leak fantasy production to wide receivers, especially off the deep ball. This is a Shaheed matchup right now. Do you want to take that risk? Do you want to take that gamble? Because he'll get you about 5 targets a game, and in those games, he's getting a few deep balls. If he reels one of those in, you got a splash performance. That's what you're looking at. And he's a guy that can deliver on any given week. He's also a guy that will bust on a lot of weeks. That being said, if you're going to roll the dice, this is the perfect matchup to do so. KJ Osborne is back getting production here. Jordan Addison's dealing with an injury. He might be back. He might not be, but he scored 20 PPR fantasy points another wide receiver you want to look at because he's going to be seeing more snaps, more targets, more opportunities, which could lead to production. Demarcus Robinson has been hot. He has been productive in his last 4 games, averaging 16 points per game. That being said, you need to look at him off waivers, or we got the Giants this week. You know the Rams can score fantasy points on them. Robinson is a candidate to score more fantasy points this week as well. Seeing 80 to 90% snap share is a good thing. So that being said, he's another guy we're looking at who's getting opportunities in a good matchup. Josh Downs versus the Raiders. He got 9 targets last week. He hasn't been great over this back 9 of the season. He's been on the downs right now. However, we got the Raiders this week. This should be a very volatile game script, a game script that could leak fantasy production to some of these players. This could be a get-up game for Josh Downs, something you may want to look at. Tyler Boyd, if Jamar Chase is out, which the news articles are saying he's trending that way, Tyler Boyd could see a ramp up in production. Saw 10.9 PPR fantasy points last week. He should score enough to get you by. We do have the Chiefs. That matchup alone could be an impact for fantasy scoring for the wide receivers on the Bengals if it's a high scoring affair. That being said, Tyler Boyd does have some upside when Higgins or Chase is out. On average, he's averaging about 13 PPR fantasy points per game. In those matchups, he hits on the high. He also hits on the low. So he's a very volatile wide receiver when Chase or Higgins are out. Demario Douglas, he's a 20% target share wide receiver. He gets a lot of volume in the passing game. He just gets a lot of short targets. That can rack up the fantasy production. He scored 12 fantasy points last week. He's usually around 6 to 12 to 13 fantasy points per game. On average, especially with this target share. We got Buffalo this week. If you need a safe wide receiver, if you need a wide receiver you know who is going to get targets, but you don't know how much he's going to score with them, Demario Douglas is going to be your guy because you know targets are going to go his way, and you're just praying that he does something with them. Maybe he scores that touchdown. Maybe he breaks off a long gain. But he's going to get a lot of short targets, usually about 5 to 10 per game. But Demario Douglas is a safe option if you're looking at just workload metrics, targets, and then hoping that you hit on production. But those are 10 wide receivers we're looking to get off the waiver wire right now. Let me know who you're trying to get off waivers right now in the comments below. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. I want to thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.